Hello there again, guys. It is me and Matt addressing possibly the most asked question we had after our last podcast and many other posts we've made in between. This whole little video is going to be based around, do we need to lift heavy to build muscle mass? Because we addressed this in our last podcast. It was 2 hours long. We understand not a lot of people watched it. So we're going to dive into now that question and talk a little bit about it, because some people have got us wrong and some people just want to know more. So Matt, if you want to start off, mate, just firing away with whatever is on your mind.
Yeah, as Tyler said, we're obviously putting across our sort of philosophies and methodologies on our own training, how we apply things within our sessions. And a lot of our posts recently have been about that, as well as the podcast that we did last time. However, the feedback we're sort of getting, like via messages and things, is that people are still sort of misinterpreting, what we're saying. When we say that you shouldn't chase strength or actively chase strength, i.e. people that keep sort of just putting more and more weight on a bar every session, we are not saying do not lift heavy. Both myself and Tyler, we both always lift heavy within our training, but heavy is always relative. So again, it's why I like to use sort of rep maxes in my training. If you're within work sets anyway, so if you're always training to your maximum capacity, it's always going to be heavy. A 6 rep max is heavy. A 10 rep max is heavy. We're not saying that you lift like a pussy, train like a pussy, and just do sets of 10 of a weight that you can sort of do 20 reps with. It's not what we're saying. Our message is, don't actively just chase strength like it's the be all and end all. Again, it is the issue that I personally have with the logbook. So you'll do a set, no one really cares how good the set was, but you got your 10 reps. So next week, right, I'm putting another kilo or 2 kilos, or in most cases, I'm going to put 5 or 10 kilos on. It just doesn't work like that. The body just can't adapt in terms of its muscular adaptation so linearly. So yeah, we're just trying to sort of get across to people that we're not saying do not train heavy.
Yeah. I mean, we made this point before. The whole reason me and Matt, we've spoke a long time, but the whole reason me and Matt came together and bashed so many ideas off each other was because we just seen it so commonly done. Like we're coaches at the end of the day, and we're here to help and advise. And when you can advise someone on something so small and make such a big difference, we're going to speak about it. And it's not about lifting heavy weights, because we've always loved heavy weights. I've always said heavyweight is the best way, in essence, to build a good physique. But heavyweight's relative. And like Matt just said, a lot of people are just putting weights on the bar, or thinking that if I get a 140 bench, I'll have a big chest. If I have a 180 squat, I'll have a big set of legs. And there's guys out there today doing these numbers without the big body part to match, because they've missed exactly what we're on about. And it is control. It is form. It is thinking beyond just A to B. And I think we've said this, Matt, before, like powerlifting mentality is creeping into bodybuilding almost more every year. And it's not inherently a bad thing, because powerlifting's like great fun and it's fantastic, but there are definitely elements to powerlifting you do not want to leak into your bodybuilding training. And one of those is definitely the whole chasing weight beyond anything else, because it will lead you to injuries and most of all, lack of progress. And if you're a bodybuilder like we are, that's just a disaster, you know? One thing like Matt just said, I'm just so, the whole thing that's taken it up on me, because I have had some big lifts in the past, I know Matt has. What's really changed for me was just looking at some of these pros, and yes, they've done incredibly big lifts in the past, or they've done it once, or they've done it a few times, but if you look at their training on a whole, they're actually never really maxing out on anything, because it's not infinitely scalable. Strength is not infinitely scalable. You get to a point with strength, 3 or 4 years into your training, where the risk to benefit ratio just isn't very high anymore. You can't keep adding plates on the bar and thinking the results are going to be the same as they was when you started. So it's just a big point that we wanted to raise and we're going to discuss now. But A good one I didn't mention when me and Matt spoke last time is Dorian Yates. Like, he's a prime example of that kind of weight over anything mentality, but with perfect control, and it worked fantastic for him. But if you do watch Dorian's later videos now, and success leaves clues, but so does failure. And Dorian says openly, if I could have done anything, I'd have calmed it down a bit. I'd have toned the weights down, I'd have lengthened my career, and I'd have changed it. You know, although Ronnie doesn't say that, Dorian does. And these are some things that we wanted to pick up on and just advise people on, because it's definitely super important.
Yeah, I think, as you said, I mean, I haven't had crazy big lifts. I'm definitely not naturally like super, super strong like some people are. But I will always train to the best of my capabilities. But that being said, with a change in approach to style of training, like even now, like on my Facebook, in the Facebook memories, things pop up all the time from like 5 years ago, 4 years ago, where I'm lifting weights far beyond, in terms of the load on the bar, that are far greater than the weights that I use now. But I'm a lot bigger now, and I'm a much better bodybuilder.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to sort of link things together, and just always chasing being stronger. It doesn't work. Too many people that like logbooks, all they ever say is, if the logbook's going up, you're getting bigger. And
we do disagree with that.
Yeah, I just don't think it's true.
I do.
Yeah. I just don't think it's true. I think too many people manipulate their training so the numbers go up. Again, we are just a generation that needs sort of instant sort of feedback, instant gratification that what we're doing must be working. Unfortunately, bodybuilding doesn't pander to that sort of mentality. Building muscle takes a long, long time. We don't get instant feedback, when we're building muscle. But I guess it's very easy for people just to want to live by the mantra that if the logbook's increasing, I'm getting bigger, because it just makes people feel better. It makes people feel that every session they do is worthwhile.
And this is
bodybuilding.
Sorry to interrupt you, Matt. This is a great point you touched on that so many people message me about, probably yourself, is that with a logbook, and we don't bash any style of training, me and you, we just do what we feel works and push forward. But with the logbook, you made a fucking brilliant point. And it was, if you go in for a session, and this happens to us all, and you pick up that first 20 and you go, fuck, that feels heavy today. The logbook just instantly defeats you, because you're already failing. If you feel for a second that when you walk through those doors, you can't beat those lifts, you failed in your own mind. And some people are that obsessed with logbooks, they failed. And then the other problem, which is even bigger, is they might go, okay, well, I can afford to be a little bit more loose on squats today. I can do a bit more bouncing. I can go a little less deep. I can swing a little bit more on my rows. And that is the problem that comes forward. Sorry to interrupt you, but it's just a good point that you made.
No, that's a very good point. And I think we are all humans. We're not robots. So when you do go into the gym, and we all know when it's a good day or a bad day. And when you're having one of them bad days where every set just doesn't feel great, and you know that it's going to be very hard to beat those numbers, you will just either sit around for 2 or 3 minutes longer than you previously did when you wrote that number down that you now have to beat. You will manipulate certain factors. Like you say, slight adjustments in tempo may sort of, that's all you might need to do to hit that number. And you will do it because we're human. And if we're craving the feedback that we must hit this number in order to be told that we're going to get better as bodybuilders, we will do that. I've done it myself. I've started a set, and in my mind, I start the set with, right, I'm going to control this set so well. And you get 2, 3, 4 reps in, and you think, if I continue with this control, I'm not going to beat that. Obviously, the best thing to do is, no, I'm just going to continue with this control, because that will be the best thing for me to grow. But I've had it drummed into me that if I don't beat the number in the logbook, then I'm not going to grow. So all of a sudden, you get sloppy, your set turns to shit. It wasn't as productive as it could have been, but you beat the book, so you now think it was more productive. And that, unfortunately, is the little bits that I dislike About the logbook, I say I've been there, I've used it, I've preached the logbook. That's why we aren't bashing. We're just talking about observations, our own experiences. I'm not going to criticize something that I haven't really done. I'll say that's probably not for me, but I'm not going to bash it unless I've been there.
Yeah.
And I've made certain observations, and now I can look at things and think about things critically, and say what I think works and what I don't think works.
I think the point you made there, made critical thinking. Like, where's it gone? Like, no disrespect to anybody, but my whole bodybuilding, I'm not a legendary bodybuilder by no means. I've hardly even competed. But I, from the beginning, realized that you must try things. And that whole critical thinking's gone. You know, everything, like you said, Matt, everything that I speak about, I've tried. I would never disrespect push-pull legs. I would never disrespect volume. I would never disrespect strength unless I tried. And the logbook points we're making, and this is exactly where I agree with you on, the logbook seems fantastic in theory because it does feed that need that people so much need in bodybuilding. Like, I understood with bodybuilding, if I want to be good, I'm prepared to wait 5 years to even see what's going on. You know, if you want an inch on your arms, be prepared to wait 5 years. That is the logic in my head. And I'm fine with that. You know, I'm fine with it. But people, like you said, they need that. Oh, today's been a good day. Today's been a great day. I can make tomorrow a great day by doing this. That sadly is just not the case with muscle growth. You will not notice muscle growth. Fat loss is great. Fat loss is weekly. You'll see great things, but muscle growth is invisible almost. And I think when you take that into account, you must start being critical with your training. You must start thinking, is this logbook working for me? Am I actually, and this is why I made the post, if you're not getting better in the mirror, what does it matter what your logbook says? Because it's true. Like, if you're not actually becoming a better bodybuilder, what does it matter what you can lift? What does it matter if your last 300 workouts have increased in strength? And a good point I'd love to ask you on, Matt, because we're just trying to keep the conversation flowing, is when you say, and this is so fascinating to me still, squats at the beginning of a workout are hard, but squats are just as hard at the end of a workout. And the only difference is load. If you want to just chat about that, because I love that. I love talking about this.
Yeah, I just think that, again, that would be something sort of that the logbook, another sort of flaw. You would always have to logbook every single movement in every single position. And it just restricts you. But I do think that movements towards the end of a session are just as important as the movements at the start of a session. But if I did a squats fresh, the load on the bar is going to be greater than if I did squats at the end.
Yeah.
But I don't think either was more beneficial. So it goes to prove that load itself isn't actually the driver behind what's stimulating the muscle growth. Yeah. Personally, I just think I think when we go in the gym, the goal should just be however many work sets we've got, just intensity. Like I say, if everything's done sort of to failure, then that's a very easy way to quantify intensity. I pretty much take all of my work sets, literally, I'll take the first couple pretty much right on the limit of failure. And then the last one will be to failure. But depending on where that exercise is, depending on what I've done before it, I don't care how much load I actually lift for, let's say, that 10 rep max. I go on knowing that, right, this first set wants to be around my 10 rep max. That will vary day to day, session to session. Some days it may be lower, some days it may be greater. But as long as I feel that I've given my best, if I can do exactly what I need to in that given moment and apply all the effort that I can apply, then that's the bit that's going to count. It doesn't matter whether my weights are slightly lower or slightly greater. Yeah. I think that across time, strength increases should come.
Yeah,
they should. Obviously, as a byproduct of training hard, as we build muscle and we adapt to the stimulus within training, we build more muscle. So therefore, there's more contractile tissue. So we will be stronger. We shouldn't aim for strength, though. It should just be a byproduct. So over 2 months, 5 months, a year, we should see a very steady sort of increase in strength. But if you sort of zoom into a graph, there will be lots of little fluctuations where I was stronger that day, weaker that day, stronger, but the whole trend goes up. And I think that's sort of how it works. Unfortunately, a logbook tells you that every single session it has to go up. It doesn't allow for those fluctuations. It forces a trend, which unfortunately, through observation, isn't equaling muscle growth.
Yeah, absolutely.
It will in some, but the vast majority of people that we see commenting saying, oh, I did this lift today, I'm going to put 10 kilos on next week, I'm going to do this, or oh, I've put 50 kilos on in 10 weeks, like on a lift. It's like, you look exactly the same, and you've looked exactly the same for a year. It's not being nasty, but it's just like you say, be critical, question everything. If you're looking at yourself and you haven't changed, if you haven't built any muscle, but you're so much stronger, what you're doing is not working for your goal. And it was Dave Crossan who commented on my Facebook the other day about this, just saying that the goal of bodybuilding is to build muscle.
Yeah.
The weights, the exercises, the sets, the reps, they are just tools. Whereas we're sort of forgetting that. We're treating the weight lifted in a session as the goal. And we're sort of forgetting that bodybuilding is about building muscle. But we're so caught up in these tiny little strength goals that we have that we're almost missing the bigger picture, that we're not actually building any muscle. And that's a problem, because this is bodybuilding.
The percentages don't make sense. Like you said, okay, let's say you start training guys and you're doing a 60 kilo barbell row, and then a year later you're doing a 120 kilo barbell row. Your weight's gone up 100%. And how does your physique reflect that percentage? And not just that, but okay, let's say in a year later, your barbell row, you're doing 140. Okay, your barbell row is through the roof. Where can it go? Where can strength go? And this is what made this all click for me, was when I looked at Jay Cutler footage, and it's not about pros, it's not about pros of this and that. I respect the pros, I know Matt does, but it's about, I was as strong as Jay Cutler. That's what it was about. Jay Cutler was doing a 140 incline for 10. I've done it. I've got videos of it, and I think with great form. But I don't even have a chest half as good as Jay Cutler. So I was like, well, do I have to do what do I have to do? How do I bridge that gap? And then when I started picking apart the differences, it made more sense to me just how strong that guy was, but how much he is kind of playing it back to do things like keep rest lower, to do things like keep the negatives bigger, to do things like intensity techniques. Like when me and Matt have spoke about this, and I've spoke about this with some other guys, progressive overload, which is what the logbook is, it underpins the logbook, is made up of so many more components than just strength. There's strength, there is tempo of repetitions, there's frequency, there's volume, there's rest periods. Technically, it's not just strength. And I think people, like Matt said, are going in there with the one goal of strength in mind. You could reduce a rest period, you could increase the negative on a rep, but by going just for strength, you open yourself up to doing the exact mistake Matt just mentioned, which is a year of logbook data where the weights are just going like this, because you won't settle for them having dips. And it's only natural for them to have dips. And I think understanding that, you're going to get so much more out of your training. And that is the limitation of a logbook. People who know how to use a logbook, they're great. They can use it well, fantastic. But I genuinely believe 70% of people, 80% don't know how, because they're doing some of these really fatal mistakes. And training in itself, I think, has almost become too robotic. I've seen a post about this before. Like, I remember, I think it was Lane Norton said something like, if someone kidnapped your mum, your wife, they put a gun to her head and they said, if you don't have an inch on your arms in 30 days, they're dead. What are you going to do? How are you going to train? And I'm not going to answer that for you, but just think, and those instinctual ways to train, why aren't they in your program? You wouldn't be doing reps in reserve. You wouldn't be bouncing in the gym and giving it 60% today and 80% tomorrow. There would be different processes. And then think about that.
Yeah. I think one of the things you mentioned, obviously, regarding the pros and Jay Cutler, I think a lot of us maybe look at pros and the way that they train and think we struggle to just by watching a video, it's very, very difficult to understand what's happening, like internally. Like bodybuilders that grow very well have usually got very, very good connection with their muscle. So you might be going in the gym thinking that you're replicating a very similar movement to a professional bodybuilder, but the story is very, very different. They're activating all of their muscle when they move. But if you're just moving weight from A to B and not even giving it a second thought, in terms of the stimulus for creating muscle growth, you're missing it all. It doesn't matter what you've lifted. Yeah. The amount of people, I mean, you can just scroll through Instagram and you can see people doing leg press videos. Lots of people like to post their leg press because you can load it up. How many people with shit quads do you see lifting 400, 450, 500 plus kilos? Then all you got to do is put blood and guts on and watch Dorian Yates with around 400 kilos on it. Like, if you think you're stronger than Dorian Yates, then that's fine. But I guarantee 99% of the people that do think that are not. And none of them have the quads of Dorian Yates. There's a lot going on. It's not just about, I say Dorian trained very, very fast. Again, it's another talking point that's come up recently about obviously rest periods. Obviously, resting for a long time it won't take away anything in terms of muscle growth. But in my opinion, what people that rest for a long time are doing are just manipulating their training just to put more load on for another exercise. If you're someone that, and I've seen it, people waiting 10 minutes to do another set of squats, like that's what powerlifters do. And if you're doing that just so you can put more weight on a bar, yes, the stimulus for growth may be exactly the same as if you waited 5 minutes, but you wouldn't have to put more weight on the bar if you rested a little bit less. So that's another thing that I'm trying to get across to people, that you don't always have to be putting the maximum amount on a bar to create the stress to build muscle. Again, intensity. If you rest for 5 minutes, if you rest for 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, and the weight is down on your, let's say, 10 rep max, but it would be greater if you waited another 5 minutes, it doesn't really matter. The stimulus for muscle growth will probably be exactly the same, because you've still worked to your maximum intensity. You've still created that mechanical tension in the muscle, and you've signaled muscle growth. So there's, again, it's just lots of manipulations to people's trainings that creep in without you almost noticing. Just to say, oh, I lifted this, that was an all-time PB. Like, no one gives a fuck about PBs. This is bodybuilding. It's not powerlifting.
And the good example of that, man, is impact. And I love powerlifting, by the way. I don't bash it. I think it's boss. I think strongman's boss as well. I think what they do is fantastic. But guys, respect your own sport as well, like bodybuilding. And this is what really gets me. Like, I love the pros, any of them, because what people are missing with the pros is, especially like Matt said, when you watch Blood and Guts, you're not watching a stupid meathead throw a bit of weight around who's got good genes and does steroids. Okay, you're watching a master. Someone who's done over 10,000 hours of his craft, a master. It's like someone playing, I don't know, Beethoven on a piano or something. This is a master of his craft. And the disrespect that's shown, going, oh yeah, well, it's genetics or steroids or one of the two. No, it's a master. He knows exactly. He's fine-tuned every single rep of every single exercise to maximize his muscular potential. And that's what we're asking you to do. Okay, I am just as strong now as I've ever been. I could probably still go and get under 180 on flat and do 6 to 8. But I know for a fact when I hit my chest, I'm using a little bit of elasticity to bounce it up, to look strong. I get just as an effective workout doing 140 on flat with 2-3 second negatives and just controlling it. And the benefit for me is the stimulus is still the same, but the risk of injury is much lower because I'm not slinging around silly weights. And like I said, the progression curve, I have much more out of it. Like when you see prime Ronnie Coleman, prime pros, or just big guys, it's smarter for them in their daily training to just take things down a notch and control it more with more negativity, more negatives and more intensity techniques just to control the weight, because you just can't bash out at 100% 24/7. I don't know why people are obsessed, like Matt said before, with 100%, like being primed for every single set. It's not possible. What are we trying to do in the gym? Are we trying to hit 100% every set? Are we trying to stress our body down to the point where it has to adapt, where we create stimulus? What are we trying to do in the gym? You know, I don't understand the powerlifting elements that have creeped in. If you're doing sniffing salts before a set of barbell rows, your head's gone. It's gone. It's as simple as that, man.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, again, all the people that bash on about recovery and things like that, and I need a deload because my central nervous system, but yet they train on adrenaline for an hour a day with sniffing salts like bunged up the nostrils. Like, bodybuilding for me should be, I don't know, like you say, bodybuilding's an art form. It should be calm. Like, sometimes when you see people in a set, it could be a really fucking hard set, but you don't know about it. It's almost like a duck on water. Like, everything inside it fucking hurts. Like, yeah, some people are going to scream and shout. Everyone's different in the gym. But just because something looks relatively easy and it looks like they're going through the motions, they are not. Dorian Yates was very, very internal with his aggression. Yep. Like, before he did a little bit of shouting. Leroy did a lot of shouting, but himself, the aggression was controlled. Again, even like Ronnie Coleman used to make bodybuilding look easy. Like, and he was a very, very strong guy, which is why he lifted the weights that he did. That doesn't mean that everyone in the world is going to have to bend over row 5 plates to have a big back. It just meant he was that strong that they're the weights that he had to use in a session after he'd already done a set of 10 with 1 plate aside, a set of 10 with 2, a set of 10 with 3, a set of 10 with 4. That's what he needed to do. If he'd have worked up in the gym like most people do, with a little warm-up set of 10 with a barbell, then 8 reps with 1 plate, then just did like triples, doubles, and singles, he'd have probably ended up at like 6 plates aside, 7 plates aside. But he didn't. He used his training and his warm-ups and his feeder set so that he didn't have to put a maximum amount of weight on a bar, but he could still get the same stimulus for muscle growth. But again, I think you just have to, I mean, all we are trying to do is encourage you to just be very, very critical about everything.
Yeah.
Observe your own training. Observe how others train. If you read something on the internet, whether it's a study from science or anything, don't just believe it. Actually, either try it if you want to, but be very critical. Just because someone says this is how you have to train, it's not true. People can't talk in such absolutes like that. I know how I like to train, and I put that across, but I will never say this is the only way you can do it. I believe this is the best method for me. Otherwise, I would not train like this. But there was a time where I used to believe that using a logbook was the best method for me, because I've been there and I've been a huge advocate of it. But I stepped back and stopped just listening to what I was being told and just agreeing with it and taking it in. But I actually started being a little bit more intelligent with things. Looked at what we were doing. Again, I used to think all the time, like, why are we doing these lifts when these guys who are so much bigger are doing these lifts? Do we have any business doing that? Yeah, there are some people that are freakishly strong out there, but I know in my soul that that's not me. I know that I'm not a freak of nature in terms of strength. So when I'm starting to do lifts that really, really doesn't reflect in my own physique, I started to question it. Again, just every time someone tells you something, you read something on the internet, do a little bit of research, look it up. Again, don't listen to this podcast and just think that everything we're telling you is gospel. A lot of this is opinion. So, but it's just what we've sort of experienced through 10 years of training, 10 years plus of training. Not so much Tyler, because he's only a baby still. Although he looks really old. But yeah, just be very, very observant of things. And and just always question things and try things, experiment. That's what bodybuilding is. There's a reason why every time a study's done, it never really applies to a bodybuilder because we do things a little bit differently.
I wish I could see how studies are done, Matt, because people go, oh, look at this study about muscle growth. If they could stand in the room, because I've researched some of this stuff and I've actually spoken to people who've done studies, and they could stand in the room and see who are doing these studies. They're like 60-kilo guys that have no training experience. They don't give a shit about the gym. They go in there and do a set of press and they're like, ugh. Like they're not us. They never will be. They're not applicable. And like you said, mate, it's bodybuilding. Anyone out there tells you they know the way, run. I'm not telling you I know the way. I don't think Matt is. We are just giving advice because bodybuilding, I honestly believe this now. Nutrition has came on leaps and bounds. Nutrition is crazy now. But I don't think training's came on as much as we'd love to believe. I think there's still a lot of questions. I still think there's a lot of ifs and buts. Nobody has the answers. But many methods that have been going on for years, just bouncing around constantly. So like Matt said, just be critical, even be critical of us, but also, you know, consider what we're trying to tell you here from people that have done things like that. And there's so many other options, and don't limit yourself to just trying one because things work better for different people, right?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right in terms of training, moving on. Like every time someone comes out with a new advancement in training, it's something that's actually already been done. Yeah. And repackaged, and a nice little fancy bow on it, and given a new name, and then people try and sell it because, unfortunately, that's what this industry is about now: money. Just the same as every industry. When people wanted to start making money out of bodybuilding, everything got complicated.
Yeah.
Right. Beforehand, everyone calls it sort of like the golden age of bodybuilding. I'm not talking about Tyler's favorite golden age of the 70s, but like the 90s where everyone started getting fucking massive.
90s is probably it. You're all right, man.
Right. And everyone trained the same way. And then, I mean, people say Dorian didn't, true. And there was a few around that didn't. But then everything's got really, really complicated as people have tried to sell products. Social media's come on and everybody's got the answer. That's only because you need something new to make a lot of money off of it. People aren't going to pay for something that's been around forever. And that's why everything's become very, very complicated. Not everyone is trying to give you the answers for free. They just want to sell you something. So as we say, just be very, very critical and question things. Because even science, you can't really say that science is applicable to bodybuilding in terms of the studies that they do. It's just sort of theory and hypothesis, because there'll always be another study that disproves one study. Like it's not true science. It's not gravity. Like no one's ever going to come out and just say, "Oh, that gravity is bullshit." Like, whereas every day a new study comes out in bodybuilding that says, "Oh, this may suggest this," "Oh, but this study may suggest this," and "this may suggest this," and they all just contradict each other. Like Tyler says, they're all tested on people that have not been in the gym, or that don't use steroids, or that have no experience of anything to do with training. Or if they're asked to do something, they can't actually do that in the experiment. Like, take this set to failure. Like, I know good bodybuilders that still don't know how to train to failure. So asking a newbie that's never stepped inside a gym just to take a set to failure will probably skew a lot of results on an experiment. But I think we're sort of going off on a tangent. So
we're all going crazy. You're absolutely right, mate. A good story I have about this, about it's getting more complicated. I remember when I was opening the gym I opened, I had painters, and I don't know anything about painting. Okay, so imagine me, a newbie, on painting. I was asking this painter, okay, we need the outside of our gym painting. Like this little, it must have been about 1/2 meter long bit of wood around the gym. I was like, we need this painting. And I said to him, it's probably not going to be a massive job. And honestly, I didn't think it was. And they'd always go to me, "Oh, no, it's a big job, that. That's a big job. It seems like you've just got to paint it, but nah, there's ladders, there's this." And I thought, oh, what the fuck? And I was thinking, this is so applicable to bodybuilding, because if an amateur comes in nowadays and they go to a coach, "Hey, coach, I want to put a bit of muscle on." What do you think I can do? Oh, it's a big job, mate. You know, there's a lot you got to think about before you start training. You got to have this, you got to have this, you got to have that. It's like, just fucking get in the gym and smash some stuff around and learn. The body is an absolutely incredible tool. It's very resilient, and you learn, you know more about yourself than anybody will. So like we've just said, it just spans onto everything we're saying. If something doesn't feel right, you know, if you're walking into the gym and you think you're Eddie Hall, because that's how your split's set up, and you've got to take your wraps in and your sniffing salts and your wrist wraps because the squat's so heavy, and you don't know if you're going to come back up, you're not training like a bodybuilder anymore. You're training like a powerlifter. Expect powerlifter level results. There are some incredibly muscular powerlifters, but let's face it, there are plenty of men on this planet that can squat 300 kilo for 8 reps that do not have half as good legs as I don't want to use Jay Cutler again, but Jay Cutler or an amateur or good amateurs for that matter, because that's not, it's always been known. It's not a way you build muscle mass. You can, but it isn't the way. We are bodybuilders. We're not powerlifters. Simple as that.
Exactly. So I think we're a good point to sort of wrap it up. So I guess in conclusion, strength gains don't really matter in terms of, they're not the driver behind growing, but you should get stronger over time. But no matter what, you should always be training heavy. That's obviously my belief. I think no matter what you're doing, you should always be training as heavy as you possibly can, with obviously sort of the prerequisites that we've said in terms of form, control. It doesn't mean throwing weight. If you have to drop weight down to use good form or connection, because again, I don't think by form, we don't mean textbook form. We just mean so that you're making a connection with the target muscle and using the target muscle. If you have to drop weight, it doesn't matter. If you never get back to your shitty all-time PB that you once apparently had because you threw weight around, it doesn't matter. You will still be growing as long as you are stressing the muscle to its maximum.
Yeah. I think to wrap up the same, if there's one thing you take away from this, guys, and I am still doing this right now, is don't be afraid to drop the weights down. It doesn't matter what someone looks at you like in the gym or what your Instagram says. If you look big, it doesn't matter what you bench. It matters what you look like you bench. Okay, if you have to take 10s off the bar or whatever in all these different lifts because of what we've said, good. That's what you get for cheating. Perfect form, perfect control, utilize the muscle, and then you can get as strong as you like. What we are against is not strength. We're against false strength. Strength created through elasticity, which I posted about the other day, bouncing in the hole. Strength created through momentum, jerking, wiggling, whatever you want to call it. That's what we are against. And 100% we're still against that. Strength is great when it's controlled and when it's done properly.
Lovely job.
Perfect timing for Matt to go smash a session. And we've smashed it, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.